One of two protesters that were struck by a car in Seattle over the weekend has since died from the injuries. She was killed by someone who broke through a barricade and purposefully drove on a highway that had been shut down. We don't understand anything more about the motivations, but we do understand that. The protesters had been on the highway for a little over an hour when a white car drove southbound through a blockade toward the protesters at a described high rate of speed, striking two victims. The driver continued southbound for over a mile before stopping. The one who died, Summer Taylor, had apparently has been described as spending the last 4 to 6 weeks tirelessly standing up for others while working full-time and supporting everyone around them. Summer had been working at Urban Animal, a veterinary clinic, and had been participating in protests week after week after week. She passed away from her injuries tragically. A description from Kenna Camacho of Summer saying, "They were always the first one to call people out for being sexist, racist, standing up for queer and trans people, basically anyone who needed to be stood up for. They were the ones there that were so vocal." And Summer died, doing that. The other individual who was struck, Diaz Love, was hospitalized in serious condition and hopefully we'll pull through. But this is just the latest in, we can't say for sure, we don't know that it was intentional, but these protesters have been targeted by people with cars, both random civilians, cops. It has been a recurring thing since the beginning of these protests.
Yeah, my heart goes out to Summer's family and her friends or their friends and everyone who has been active in Seattle as the president and his lackeys have been celebrating the quote-unquote liberation of Seattle as police moved in on the free zone there. I mean, this is the thing. We talked about all the race baiting and coming from the White House, and then you see it play out. When you listen to this much poison from the president, from Fox News, what is the difference between this kind of speech and the kinds of videos that ISIS puts out about who they should target and why? Mm-hmm. And look at the tactic. The tactic is the same. So if this person were Muslim and the target was white and Christian, we would call this an act of terrorism. That is what it is. This is white terrorism. All right. It is. And I don't know if the driver was white, but it is absolutely based on ideology that the Black Lives Matter movement is somehow a hate group or somehow should be targeted.
Yeah, the driver was black. We don't know much about the driver. We do know that the driver was black. The only information I was able to find was that the sobriety test apparently showed that the driver wasn't under the influence. While in custody, the authorities described him as being reserved and sullen and said that he had asked about the victims. Okay, again, don't know exactly why, but we do know that we have seen this over and over again, and here's one thing coming out of it. State Patrol announced on Twitter on Saturday night that protesters would no longer be allowed on Interstate 5, quote, "for the safety of all citizens, including protesters and motorists."
Yeah, that's awful.
Someone breaks through a barricade, kills someone, and effectively the protesters are punished for it. That they won't be able to do these protests anymore, which is what the cops have wanted this entire time. So it becomes sort of convenient that when they are targeted with violence, suddenly the aims of people who oppose the protesters are being advanced. Hypothetically, they could put up more effective barricades. They could
stand there. They could be there protecting protesters, right? I mean, we've talked about this, but it's like, visit other countries around the world. What happens when there are large-scale demonstrations is that a lot of them don't have to provide their own security. The law enforcement in wherever you are will be the security. They'll protect your right to free speech. So yeah, put a few. How many cops do you think you'd have to put to protect some protesters? 1, 2, anything to prevent a crazed person from driving through a barricade and killing people?
Yeah. And by the way, Danny sends in a super chat saying Summer's pronouns were they, them. I apologize. I was trying to use those pronouns. If I did not, I apologize. No slight was intended, but I apologize. Both Summer and Diaz Love use they, them as pronouns. So let's just understand that. But anyway, just, tragedy. And one that, again, because of this particular sort of, using your car as a weapon is not new in this area. The idea that the protesters would be punished for this, I just find absolutely insane.
Yeah, I mean, sorry guys, but only a few weeks ago, the same thing happened in Seattle. someone tried to drive through a demonstration, right? Like, how many more do we need? Again, put one police officer up there. Put one.
Yeah.
I challenge you to see if the same thing would happen if you put one police officer, one police car there.
Yeah. Oh, God. Check out the Damage Report podcast each day, wherever you get your podcasts, whether Pocket Casts or Stitcher or iTunes. You can join me as I give you the news and stories you want, with a range of co-hosts and interview guests jumping in on the fun each day. Again, that's the Damage Report, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you get them at iTunes, don't forget to rate and review. Sometimes I'll read them live on the show.